At the reception, the Arab billionaire's words were a mystery to all until the black housekeeper seamlessly interjected in Arabic. The hotel manager, enraged by the hours-long chaos from the language barrier, observed the billionaire's silent, obvious frustration as his assistant frantically cancelled multi-million-dollar engagements. Sandra Morrison, a blonde with a cold demeanor, slapped the front counter, causing every staff member to flinch. She had managed the Grand Plaza Hotel for nearly a decade, yet had never encountered a situation so awkward and humiliating. "Have you contacted every interpreter in this city?" Sandra snapped, pivoting to Alice, the young receptionist beside her. Alice's hands trembled as she nodded, her eyes red-rimmed and on the brink of tears. "Mrs. Morrison, we've already contacted 3 professional interpreters. None comprehend him. He speaks neither English, French, Spanish, nor any common tongue," Alice replied, her voice quivering. Sandra cast an exasperated glance at the man standing in the lobby like a bronze figure. Omar Aliad, in his early 50s, possessed a stern face and penetrating gaze that radiated authority. He wore a perfectly tailored black suit, a diamond-studded watch on his wrist, and gleaming Italian leather shoes reflecting the overhead crystal chandeliers. Beside him, his young assistant John Ellis was engrossed in his phone, his face etched with strain. Everyone understood the gravity of the situation. Omar Al-Fayed was no ordinary guest. As CEO of the energy giant Alphabet International and owner of numerous multinational corporations, he wielded immense influence over the global hotel sector. Even a hint of displeasure could devastate the Grand Plaza's reputation. Sandra approached Omar, striving to maintain her composure. Her tone was polite, yet tinged with exasperation. "Sir, this is a 5-star hotel in America. I find it hard to believe you cannot communicate in English or any international language." Omar remained silent, fixing Sandra with a cold stare, his hands clenched in his suit pockets. Sandra's temper flared and her voice began to unravel. "This is unacceptable. We've wasted nearly 2 hours trying to communicate with you. This is an enormous waste of time." Across the lobby, Denise Washington quietly polished the floor, observing the scene with a mixture of familiarity and growing indignation. In her 6 years at the hotel, she had witnessed the arrogance of the wealthy and powerful countless times. But today's display transcended arrogance. It was blatant discrimination rooted solely in a language barrier. Denise scrutinized Omar more closely and realized he clearly grasped every insult Sandra hurled at him in English. His eyes darkened, his expression becoming even more resolute. Denise sighed inwardly, thinking, "So he's deliberately staying silent to assess the hotel's attitude?" Sandra, now shouting for the entire lobby to hear, escalated her voice further. "If you cannot communicate, then you don't deserve to stay here. The Grand Plaza is not for impolite people like you." Her words elicited a slight frown from Omar. John Ellis leaned in, whispering something urgent in Arabic, his fingers still darting across his phone. Denise understood immediately. They were preparing to cancel his reservation and all his prearranged meetings. Her chest burned with indignation. Though she had never intervened at work before, always remaining in the background like a shadow, Denise knew she had to do what was right today. She took a deep breath, set aside her mop and strode confidently toward Omar. Every eye in the lobby turned to her as she halted before him. Then in flawless Arabic she spoke softly but clearly. "Good afternoon, Mr. Alft. I apologize for the terrible confusion. Please allow me to assist you in resolving everything." Omar's eyes widened in surprise and relief. Sandra froze, her mouth agape. The lobby fell into a stunned silence as no one had anticipated this turn of events. John Ellis quickly whispered something else in Arabic and both he and Omar visibly relaxed. Genuine relief washed over their faces. Denise turned toward Sandra, her gaze steady and unwavering as she addressed the astonished manager. "Mrs. Morrison, I can communicate with Mr. Alft. If you'll permit me, I will handle everything for him." Sandra ground her teeth, her eyes blazing with fury and embarrassment. She could not accept that a housekeeper had succeeded where she had utterly failed. With a polite gesture, Denise invited Omar to a private area to continue their conversation. He nodded, gratitude and respect shining in his previously stern expression. Meanwhile, Sandra Morrison stood rooted to the spot, overwhelmed by helplessness and shock. Little did she know that this moment would ignite a chain of events that would forever alter all their lives. As Denise guided billionaire Omar Al-Fayed toward the private VIP lounge to resolve the misunderstandings, she felt the stunned, curious gazes of every hotel employee fixed on her back. For the first time in 6 years, she was no longer an invisible shadow at the Grand Plaza. Yet Denise knew this moment might be fleeting. People like her rarely get to step outside the role society has assigned them. As she led Omar to the plush leather sofa in the VIP sitting room, Denise couldn't help but recall the day she first entered this hotel. She was 26 then, young, eager, and aspiring to a better life in the big city. Reality, however, proved harsh. The only position the hotel had offered her was as a cleaner, where she was meant to stay out of sight and never directly interact with guests. Denise remembered Sandra Morrison's words from her very first interview, delivered with cold disdain as Sandra appraised her from head to toe. "Miss Washington, remember this. Our guests are distinguished individuals. Your job is to keep things spotless and never disturb them. I expect you to understand your place." Those words etched themselves into Denise's mind, a constant reminder of the lowly status society had assigned her. Over the years she'd endured Sandra's contempt and racist slurs, witnessed her boss openly sneer at other people of color, especially immigrant colleagues struggling with English. 3 years ago, Denise had once defended Maria, a Mexican housekeeping assistant, when Sandra viciously reprimanded her for mispronouncing a word. Denise clearly remembered that morning. The sun had just risen through the hotel windows as she cleaned the 4th-floor hallway when she heard Sandra's furious voice in the staff break room. "Maria, if you can't speak proper English, you'd better pack up and go back to wherever you came from. This is America. Learn to respect the country that's taken you in." Maria had trembled with tears streaming down her worn face, unable to meet Sandra's glare. Denise couldn't stand by. She approached calmly but firmly. "Miss Morrison, Maria made a small mistake. There's no excuse for treating her like that." Sandra spun on Denise, eyes icy with hatred. "Denise, you have no right to lecture me. Remember your place." As a result, Denise was fired that very day from her previous cleaning job. She still recalled walking out of that building, every step heavy with despair and powerlessness. 4 weeks afterward, she struggled without work in a glamorous yet heartless city. It was then the Grand Plaza offered her a lifeline, knowing well she'd have to remain silent and humble. Yet she never regretted defending Maria. From childhood in impoverished Harlem, Denise had understood the value of fairness and dignity. No matter how life crushed her, she vowed to uphold those humanistic values her parents instilled. What Denise rarely revealed was her extraordinary linguistic talent. Before becoming a cleaner, she'd volunteered for an international humanitarian organization. Over 4 formative years she traveled through Africa's poorest regions and through the Middle East's crisis zones, mastering French, Spanish, German, Arabic and of course her native English. Her time in Dubai as a volunteer interpreter for Syrian and Iraqi refugees was particularly transformative. There she learned the nuances of Arabic culture, from subtle dialects to minute gestures. This explained Omar Al-Fayed's astonished reaction when Denise addressed him in his mother tongue. Back in the present, Denise glanced at Omar. He still sat with that keen authoritative gaze, but now it had softened considerably. Finally he spoke in perfect English, surprising her. "Miss Washington, I'm deeply impressed by your courage and kindness. I have no problem speaking English, but I chose to remain silent to see how this hotel would treat someone they deemed weaker than themselves." Denise's heart raced with astonishment. She understood that this conversation would change her life forever. What she didn't expect was that Sandra Morrison, standing just outside the lounge door, had overheard every word, her eyes now burning with hatred and fear foretelling the storm about to descend on Denise. Outside the VIP lounge, Sandra Morrison's breathing grew ragged, her gaze seemingly able to penetrate the wall to see Denise's face, the woman she had always considered invisible, who now stood at the heart of the very crisis Sandra herself could not control. In Sandra's heart, anger was giving way to a burning animosity. She had never imagined that one day she would be humiliated in front of everyone by a cleaning lady, a person she believed to be utterly beneath her. With icy cold eyes and a venomous tone, Sandra turned to the receptionist, Alice, who was doing her best to avoid her manager's stare. "Look at this," Sandra spat. "Now our 5-star hotel has to rely on a black cleaning lady to handle a VIP guest. This is the most outrageous thing I've ever witnessed. Alice bowed her head in silence, a knot of discomfort tightening in her chest. She dared not speak up. Everyone knew the consequences of defying Sandra. The manager had a habit of punishing dissenters mercilessly. Unable to contain herself any longer, Sandra stormed toward the VIP lounge door. As the door cracked open, she clearly heard Omar's calm but cutting voice. "Miss Denise, I chose to remain silent these past 2 hours because I wanted to see how this hotel treats those who don't speak perfect English. I am truly disappointed. You are the only person here who has acted with dignity and respect toward me." Sandra flung the door wide and burst in, her composure utterly shattered. Her eyes bored into Omar as her voice lost all its usual politeness. "Mr. Allied, who do you think you are daring to test our hotel like this? This is America. This hotel is for civilized people who speak the most basic international language. If you can't manage that, you should find somewhere that suits your culture." An eerie silence fell over the room. Denise could clearly see every muscle in Omar's face tighten. His eyes blazed with anger. Yet he maintained an admirable restraint. John Ellis, Omar's assistant, immediately leaned in, whispering urgently in Arabic, clearly suggesting they leave at once. Omar rose deliberately, his bearing regal, powerful, and impeccably composed. He fixed Sandra with a freeze-framed glare as if passing a silent sentence. "I have stayed in many countries and in some of the world's most renowned hotels, but I have never been insulted as I have here. I did not remain silent because I didn't understand. I remained silent because I wanted to know the truth. And now, Miss Morrison, you have shown me the true face of the Grand Plaza." Sandra sneered, utterly oblivious to the gravity of her words. "Wonderful. Then by all means, sir, feel free to find a place that meets your standards. I will not keep someone like you in my hotel." Denise stood frozen, her heart clenched at the hateful, discriminatory remarks. She had grown accustomed to silent prejudice, but to see a man of Omar's stature insulted so openly pained her deeply. Omar nodded to his assistant, his voice soft yet weighty. "John, cancel all our arrangements at this hotel immediately. We will find another venue and please inform our partners of the reason." At these words, panic flashed across Sandra's face for the first time. She realized far too late the serious consequences of her outburst, but her pride and stubbornness would not let her back down. Instead of apologizing, she grew even more aggressive. "Fine, go ahead and leave. The Grand Plaza doesn't lack VIP guests, and don't forget to tell your partners that you're simply not capable of communicating here." Omar stared back at Sandra, his gaze deep and assessing, as if sizing up an opponent who had completely lost her mind. "I will remember your words, but don't be surprised when the fallout from this affects you and this hotel." Sandra failed to grasp the seriousness of his warning. She turned to Denise, her voice dripping with threat. "And you, Denise Washington, you have overstepped your duties. Consider this a warning. This is the last time you intervene in matters beyond your role. Understood?" For the first time, Denise looked Sandra squarely in the eye, her expression devoid of fear, only a steely calm. She replied without bowing her head. "I understand perfectly, Miss Morrison." Sandra swept out of the room, leaving tension so taut it felt as if the next step might snap it. No sooner had the door closed than Omar turned gently to Denise, his gaze now soft, filled with respect and gratitude. "Miss Denise, you truly are an exceptional woman. I promise you your courage today will not be in vain." Denise watched Sandra's retreating figure in silence, a swirl of apprehension and emotion welling inside her. She knew this was only the beginning of a real battle, a battle in which justice and human dignity would be put to the test. But this time she was ready to face whatever lay ahead. When the VIP lounge door clicked shut behind Sandra, the hallway fell into silence, broken only by the faint echo of her angry footsteps receding into the distance. Denise stood motionless, Sandra's cutting warning still ringing in her ears like a blade. Yet now the emotion surging inside her wasn't fear, but a deep, righteous indignation at what had just transpired. She glanced at Omar, the powerful man standing quietly, his gaze drifting to the large window as he seemed lost in thought. Denise knew that behind his silence lay an inner world few could fathom. Once more her mind wandered back to her meaningful years in the Middle East. Those youthful 4 years volunteering in Dubai where she witnessed heart-wrenching and inspiring stories firsthand. Throughout her time as a volunteer, Denise didn't just learn Arabic as a tool for communication. Locals shared with her tearful tales of war and peace, stories they often kept tucked away in their hearts. She saw the genuine warmth in the smallest gestures of hospitality, the subtlety of afternoon tea conversations, and the fierce pride they held for their culture and homeland. Those experiences had nurtured in her a special love for that land and its people. Yet deep down, Denise never imagined that her hard-won knowledge would ever serve her in a moment like this, right here in America, in what was supposed to be the most sophisticated workplace. More than anyone, she understood how brutally Omar must have suffered those insults, and his incredible restraint only revealed more of his noble character. "Miss Denise, I sincerely apologize for putting you in this awkward position." Omar finally broke the silence, his voice calm but tinged with genuine disappointment. Denise met his eyes with honesty, shaking her head slightly. "Sir, I'm the one who should apologize on behalf of this entire hotel. I am truly ashamed of the behavior you witnessed, but please know that not all of us are like that." Omar smiled gently, and for the first time, Denise saw real comfort and ease in his deep eyes. "I know that, Denise. In truth, I realized it the moment you spoke to me in my native tongue. Still, it pained me to see such sad realities unfold. I believed the world had become more civilized. Perhaps I was mistaken." Those words resonated deeply in Denise's heart. She drew in a steadying breath, summoning the courage to voice what she'd kept buried for years. "Sir, I spent many years in Dubai learning to love your language, your culture, and your people. And there I learned that true civilization isn't measured by wealth or skin color, but by how we treat one another with respect and sincerity." Omar stood in thoughtful silence, moved by the simple, heartfelt truth in Denise's words. There was something profound in the way she spoke, an unassuming sincerity that soothed his lingering disappointment. After a few steadying seconds, Denise lifted her chin and looked him directly in the eye. "I have stayed silent for too long, Mr. Alft. I allowed myself to remain invisible, accepting injustice day after day. But today, seeing what you endured, I realized my silence was part of the problem." Omar nodded slowly, his expression full of understanding and encouragement. Denise's voice grew stronger. "I've decided it's time to speak up. I will no longer be invisible. I want to help you achieve justice. I know it won't be easy, but believe me, I will do everything I can." Omar stepped forward and extended his hand in a gesture both formal and warmly friendly. "Denise, I've met many people in my life, but few as brave and admirable as you. I have complete faith in you and I'm grateful for your courage." Denise took his hand, feeling the genuine warmth of his gratitude in that firm handshake. Just then, the door swung open and Sandra Morrison stormed back in, her face the most furious Denise had ever seen. Her voice rang out cold and threatening. "Denise Washington, what do you think you're doing? I warned you very clearly already." Denise turned to Sandra without a flicker of doubt. She knew this was the moment that would define her life, and this time she would not back down. With a calm but resolute tone, Denise answered clearly enough for Sandra to realize she could no longer intimidate her. "I'm doing what's right, Miss Morrison. Something you should have done from the start." Sandra stood frozen at Denise's unwavering response, suddenly aware that the cleaning lady before her was no longer someone she could bully. A fierce confrontation had truly begun. Sandra stood frozen, her eyes wide with shock and disbelief at Denise's completely unexpected response, someone she had never taken seriously in the past 6 years. Anger mixed with astonishment drained the color from her face, her gaze unable to believe what had just happened. Denise turned her back to Sandra, her eyes clear yet unwavering, exuding a strength Sandra had never before witnessed. Then with astonishing composure she addressed Omar in perfect, articulate and fluent Arabic, so impeccable that even Omar himself was taken aback. "Mr. Alfid, I sincerely apologize for the disrespectful attitude and behavior you've just experienced. As someone who has lived and worked for many years in your homeland, I fully understand the profound value of Arab culture and language. I hope you will still allow our hotel the chance to rectify this mistake." Denise's words were far more than routine politeness. They were carefully chosen, nuanced, and heartfelt, demonstrating her respect for Arab culture down to the smallest detail. Omar's eyes shone with surprise and delight, clearly impressed by this woman's rare linguistic talent and cultural sensitivity. He regarded Denise intently, then replied in Arabic with warm respect. Ms. Denise, your deep understanding and genuine respect for my culture truly move me. Your command of the language is so flawless that I feel as though I'm speaking with someone born and raised in my own country. I believe that people like you are the true pride of this hotel. Meanwhile, Sandra remained rooted at the doorway, her mouth opening as if to speak, but no words would come. She had never felt more humiliated, not because Denise was in the wrong, but because Denise was entirely right. The person she had always dismissed and overlooked had suddenly become the hotel's sole savior of its reputation. That bitter, crushing realization pushed Sandra to the edge of control. Storming forward, her face flushed with rage and eyes burning with malice, Sandra snapped. Denise, explain yourself right now. Why have you been hiding this ability for all these years? Are you deliberately making a mockery of me in front of our guests? Denise turned calmly to face Sandra, her gaze steady yet tinged with regret. I haven't hidden my abilities, Miss Morrison. It's just that you never paid enough attention to see them. Fuming, Sandra's voice trembled with fury. You're shameless. A mere cleaner has no right to speak to me like that. And you certainly have no business dealing with the hotel's VIP guests. Her harsh words rang out in the silent corridor, exposing her pettiness and unprofessionalism. Omar shot Sandra a stern look and for the first time intervened in English, his tone measured but firm. Miss Morrison, the only mockery here is your insulting and condescending attitude. It's because of Miss Denise that I've not checked out already, and instead of thanking her, you continue to berate her. How regrettable. Omar's sharp rebuke struck Sandra's pride like a thunderbolt. She stood speechless, her lips quivering, her face ashen with shame. She had never imagined that Denise, the person she'd always considered insignificant, could completely overturn the power dynamics in the very hotel she devoted her life to building. Omar turned back to Denise, his expression sincere and kind. Miss Denise, I truly appreciate your courage today. Not many people would dare to stand up to such injustice and insult. Denise offered a small grateful smile, pride and relief mingling in her eyes. Perhaps I've been waiting for an opportunity like this, Mr. Alfiad. Thank you for giving me the courage to break my silence. Outside, Sandra strode back toward her office, her hands trembling with anger and humiliation. But rather than reflecting on her own wrongdoing, she fanned the flames of her resentment. A cold, ruthless plan of revenge began to take shape in her mind. This time she vowed, Denise would have no chance to fight back. The tension in the Grand Plaza's lobby was now almost unbearable. After Omar's crisp declaration in English, every eye in the room fixed on Sandra Morrison, the hotel manager who had always been known for her icy pride, now rooted to the spot, her face draining from furious red to ashen panic. Sandra suddenly felt her heart pound faster than ever, her palms slick with sweat as Omar's razor-sharp gaze bore into her. Only now did she begin to realize the magnitude of her blunder. But stubborn pride coursing through her veins drove her to feign composure, forcing a weak smile. Mr. Alft, perhaps there has been some serious misunderstanding between us. A misunderstanding? Omar cut in, his voice low and resonant, chilling the air around them. I'm afraid you understood perfectly well what you said and did, Mrs. Morrison, and I believe everyone here understands it too. Sandra felt the mockery in Omar's eyes and in the stares of the staff, who once dreaded her, but now looked at her with reproach and anticipation. Unused to losing control, she snapped back in her usual harsh tone. I'm sorry, but I think you're overreacting. This is my hotel. I have the right to set standards and enforce requirements for our guests. At that, Omar rose deliberately, stepping forward for the first time since he arrived, standing directly before her. Calm yet commanding, he introduced himself. Mrs. Morrison, perhaps it's time I identify myself clearly. I am Omar Al-Fayed, Chairman and CEO of Al-Fayed International, the largest energy conglomerate in the Middle East. My company holds strategic partnerships with many major corporations and hotels across the US and Europe, including the Grand Plaza chain. Sandra froze, her legs trembling beneath her. In that moment, all the false confidence and pride she'd built over the years crumbled in the face of Omar's revealed stature. She tried to speak but found her throat dry and her voice gone. Terror stamped across her features. But Omar wasn't finished. His voice remained steady and incisive. Mrs. Morrison, there is one more thing I want you to know. Every racist insult and discriminatory action you've taken since I stepped into this hotel has been recorded clearly. I could forward that recording to the Grand Plaza Board of Directors or to any of our other strategic partners. The lobby was nearly frozen solid at the weight of his words. Receptionist Alice covered her mouth in stunned disbelief while other staff, long accustomed to Sandra's cruelty, exchanged looks of shock and hope. Denise stood silently, her heart racing, realizing Omar wasn't just standing up for himself, but for people like her who had suffered Sandra's contempt. Sandra slipped into a state of full-blown panic, her voice trembling as she addressed Omar with desperation. "Mr. Hald, please understand. I never intended to insult you. It was just what, Mrs. Morrison?" Omar's tone froze her. "Just a moment of racism and contempt, or just a moment when you assumed I didn't understand English and felt free to display your hatred and disdain?" Sandra stood mute, eyes darting for an ally, but found only cold, accusing stares. She had never felt so alone and powerless. Please give me a chance to explain and make amends," she begged. "A chance." Omar's voice dripped with gentle sarcasm, enough to pierce her guilt. "I'm afraid you never grasped the true meaning of that word. I gave you your chance simply by remaining silent and observing how you treated me and Denise. Unfortunately, you destroyed it yourself." Sandra backed away, her breath ragged, face ashen. Her worst nightmare had come true. Not because of Omar's power, but because her own arrogance and discrimination had led her to a catastrophic collapse. Omar turned to Denise, his gaze filled with respect and gratitude. Denise realized this was no longer just a personal battle between Omar and Sandra. It had become a powerful lesson for everyone about the consequences of prejudice and contempt. In that moment, Denise knew she was no longer invisible. Omar's true identity was more than a shocking revelation. It reaffirmed that human dignity is never to be toyed with regardless of someone's station. Sandra, once perched at the summit of power, now faced the full weight of her own mistakes. Her future hanging by a thread, awaiting final judgment from Omar and all those around. The Grand Plaza lobby remained deathly silent after Omar revealed his true identity. Every eye was fixed on Sandra Morrison, the once powerful, proud manager, now standing motionless, her face drained of color by the shock. Her wide, hollow eyes mirrored the horror of realizing that her racist insults and discriminatory actions had been recorded, and that the man before her had the power to destroy her career with a single command. Suddenly, Sandra's phone buzzed violently in her hand, shattering the oppressive quiet. She flinched, staring at the screen as David Anderson appeared, the regional CEO, her direct superior. Her heart pounded and a cold dread seeped through every cell of her body. Reluctantly, she answered, her voice trembling as if waking from a nightmare. Yes, this is Sandra Morrison." The voice on the other end was icy and decisive, carrying stark authority even without speakerphone. Everyone could feel the seriousness of the call. Sandra nodded frantically, panic flooding her features as her legs began to buckle under the weight of impending disaster. Within moments she hung up. Her face was utterly vacant, eyes staring into nothingness, as if all her pride and authority had evaporated. Slowly she looked up and met Omar's and Denise's gazes, eyes filled with solemn integrity she had never known before. She knew in that instant it was over. "The hotel management, they just fired me." Sandra's weak, quavering confession drifted through the lobby, igniting a ripple of whispers and startled looks among staff and guests alike. Omar stood quietly, his expression sober. There was no triumph in his face, only a profound sadness for someone who had had ample opportunity to show kindness, but instead had destroyed herself through arrogance and unfounded hatred. With nothing left to cling to, Sandra turned and silently fled the lobby under the watchful eyes of everyone present. Each heavy step carried the bitter taste of regret as she realized her own prejudice and haughtiness had trapped her in this downfall. Once the lobby doors closed behind her, Omar turned to Denise, his face softening into a genuine smile. "Miss Denise, I know this wasn't an easy situation for you, but I deeply admire your courage and integrity today. You did the right thing, and I believe those qualities are exactly what my company needs right now." Denise's eyes widened in surprise and curiosity. "You mean, I'd like to invite you to join ALFT International as a Senior Director of Cultural Development and Diplomatic Relations," Omar announced. "With your linguistic skills and deep understanding of Arab culture, I believe you're ideal to build bridges between our company and our international partners." Denise was stunned. She had never dreamed of such an offer, especially from someone as powerful as Omar. In an instant, years of hardship and silence evaporated, replaced by a surge of pride and confidence she had longed to feel. "I am honored by your offer, Mr. Alft," Denise replied, her voice trembling with emotion. "But are you certain I'm right for such an important role?" Omar's eyes shone with absolute trust. "Miss Denise, today you proved that dignity, talent, and courage are the true measures of worth. I have complete faith in your abilities and character. This position is more than a job. It's an opportunity for you to champion fairness and cultural diversity, values our company deeply upholds." Denise nodded, gratitude and determination welling in her heart. She understood this was not only a pivotal moment in her career, but a chance to help create a more just and inclusive environment where no one would ever again suffer prejudice or disdain because of their background or language. Omar extended his hand, and as Denise accepted it, the lobby staff and guests looked on in admiration. That handshake stood as a powerful affirmation that humanity, bravery, and kindness will always overcome prejudice and injustice. Meanwhile, out on the street, Sandra moved among the bustling crowd, her mind reeling from the consequences of her racism. She realized too late that arrogance and bigotry only lead to self-destruction, and now there was nothing left to salvage. 6 months later, in the plush, sunlit executive office on the top floor of the Alft International headquarters, Denise sat by the large window, her gaze drifting to the distant horizon. Below her stretched a breathtaking cityscape of glittering skyscrapers bathed in morning light, an image that stood in stark contrast to the woman who once labored invisibly as a housekeeper at the Grand Plaza Hotel. Denise offered a quiet smile, equal parts pride and disbelief at how drastically her life had changed. Just half a year ago she'd been trapped in the shadows of anonymity, enduring Sandra Morrison's contempt and scorn in silence. Now she was the executive director of cultural relations and diplomacy for Alft International, a powerful multinational energy conglomerate with hundreds of branches around the world. Her office had become more than just a workplace. It was a testament to the recognition of the talent and courage she'd displayed on that fateful day. Marcus Johnson stepped into the room carrying a binder of important documents. He'd started out as a front desk clerk at the Grand Plaza and had been the only person to treat Denise with kindness and respect during her most difficult moments. Now Marcus was her senior assistant, the right hand she relied on for every major international initiative. "Denise," he said with a warm smile as he set the binder on her desk. "The proposal for our cultural exchange and sustainable energy program with our Middle Eastern partners is complete. I'm confident it's going to be another big success." "Thank you, Marcus," Denise replied, her tone genuine. "You know, without your full support, I doubt I'd be where I am today." He shook his head modestly. "I'm the one who should thank you, Denise. You showed me never to underestimate myself, and that courage can change everything." Denise returned his smile, her eyes growing reflective as she thought back on the rocky journey that had brought her here. Marcus had become more than just a colleague. He was a close friend who reminded her of her true worth, something she'd nearly forgotten under the cruelty of people like Sandra. Speaking of Sandra, a fleeting thought of the former manager crossed Denise's mind, once so powerful, now completely vanished from the glittering world she once ruled. After that day's scandal, news of Sandra's racist behavior had spread like wildfire across the media and social networks, utterly destroying her reputation. Denise knew Sandra had paid dearly for her actions. But she felt no joy or satisfaction, only sorrow for someone who'd had every opportunity to be better, but allowed prejudice to blind her conscience. "I heard Sandra still can't find another job," Marcus remarked gently as if reading her thoughts. "Perhaps it's the lesson she needed." Denise nodded, her eyes still on the horizon. "Marcus, I never wanted anyone to suffer no matter how deeply they hurt me. But I believe everyone must face the consequences of their choices. Sandra learned that the hard way." Marcus looked at her with even deeper admiration than before. Not only was she an exceptional leader, but she stood as a symbol of rare compassion, a quality that earned his unwavering respect. A light knock at the door interrupted them. Omar Alft entered, his face warm and friendly. "Denise, Marcus," he greeted. "I just received word that our new cultural cooperation program was officially approved by the UAE government. Once again, Denise, you've done outstanding work." Denise beamed, her heart swelling with pride. Omar's praise carried special weight. He was the man who had recognized her true value at her lowest point. "I was simply doing my job, Mr. Alft," she replied humbly, though happiness shone in her eyes. Omar moved closer, his expression sincere. "What you've brought to our company goes beyond business success. You've created a new culture here, a culture of respect and fairness where people are judged by their true abilities. That's exactly what I hoped for when I invited you aboard." Denise fell silent for a moment, her heart tight with emotion. She realized that the greatest gift life had given her wasn't career achievements or social status, but the chance to live with dignity and to help build a fairer, kinder world for everyone. She looked at the two men before her, Marcus, her faithful friend, and Omar, her compassionate leader, and understood that their shared journey was only beginning. The values of humanity and justice she had fought for would continue to spread, transforming the lives of countless others, just as her own had been transformed. And perhaps, Denise thought, that was the true meaning of success she had always sought. 6 months later, in a rundown little apartment on the other side of the city, Sandra Morrison sat alone, her vacant eyes glued to the screen of a battered laptop, displaying one rejection email after another. Each message was brief and cold, a stark testament to her total collapse. Once a woman of immense power who ran one of the city's most luxurious hotels, Sandra now lived in unending shame. Though half a year had passed since the Grand Plaza racism scandal, its echo haunted Sandra every day like an unshakable ghost. The video capturing her hateful, discriminatory outburst had gone viral in days, racking up millions of views. She'd lost her job, her reputation, and even the respect of her closest family and friends. No one would listen to her excuses, and none had the heart to forgive her vicious words. Her family, once so proud of her success and status, had turned their backs. One evening, Sandra still shuddered to recall her sister's icy words over the phone. "Sandra, I never imagined you could become someone like this. You've brought shame on our entire family. Don't ever contact me again." Those words felt like a blade twisting in her heart, wounding the pride she'd always carried so high. All the confidence she once flaunted was now bitter memory, as she realized her own bigotry had brought her to ruin. Every time she ventured outside, Sandra felt the sting of judgmental, mocking glances. She tried to hide beneath a wide-brimmed hat, but the more she concealed herself, the more insignificant she felt. Neighbors who once respected her now whispered behind her back whenever she passed in the hallway. Loneliness settled deeply into Sandra's soul until she no longer recognized the woman staring back at her in the mirror. Even worse, Sandra applied for jobs everywhere, small hotels, mid-range restaurants, even retail shops, but no one would hire her. A simple online search of her name revealed the scandal, and every door slammed in her face. Sandra Morrison had become an indelible stain on the hospitality industry and beyond. One cold autumn morning, she sat in her darkened room, hands trembling around a long, cold cup of coffee as she stared at the latest headline in an online article. Denise Washington, from invisible housekeeper to icon of fairness and courage in business. The photo of Denise beaming beside Omar cut Sandra like a knife. The article went on. "Denise's story is more than personal triumph. It's a powerful lesson for anyone mired in racial prejudice." Former Grand Plaza manager Sandra Morrison remains unemployed and ostracized. Those words were the last straw. Sandra slammed her coffee cup onto the table. The mug shattered, shards slicing her hand, but she barely felt the pain. Physical wounds couldn't compare to the torment in her mind. She broke down in tears, bitter, regretful tears as her thoughts spiraled. Why did this have to go so far? Why did I let pride and prejudice blind me? She replayed every moment she could have stopped herself, every chance she'd had to act differently, only to see she'd thrown them all away. Now it was too late. The woman who once stood at the pinnacle, thinking power and prestige could excuse any cruelty, finally understood that true worth lies not in titles or wealth, but in how we treat others, especially those less powerful. Just then her phone rang. Sandra flinched, hurriedly wiped her tears and answered with a trembling voice. On the other end was Grand Plaza's corporate lawyer. "Miss Morrison, I'm calling to inform you that the company will not pay any severance following your termination for gross misconduct. Please do not contact us again." Sandra went numb, dropping the phone to the floor. The soft click of plastic on linoleum felt like a final crushing blow. It was the moment she realized she'd lost everything. her job, her honor, her family, and the very essence that once defined her. From the heights of power, she had plummeted into an abyss of her own making, where no exit remained for pride and prejudice. In that dark, lonely room, Sandra finally grasped the harshest lesson of her life. The cost of despising others is far higher than she could ever have imagined, and now it was irrevocably too late. While Sandra sat alone, her heart heavy with bitter regret, in a shabby corner of the city on the other side, right in the glittering heart of the Grand Plaza Hotel, a sweeping reform was unfolding at breakneck speed. The scandal Sandra ignited had forced the hotel's leadership to rethink every policy and core value they upheld, and they understood that the hotel's very survival hinged on the urgent decisions they now had to make. In the wake of the racism scandal, the Grand Plaza's reputation lay in tatters, reservations plummeted, and public criticism roared across every media outlet. Yet at that seemingly desperate moment, Omar Al-Lide stepped forward, not to exact vengeance or flaunt his power, but to throw open a new door, offering a fresh start, the chance to overhaul the hotel's culture from its roots. Omar did more than accept a mere apology from the board. He committed a substantial investment, becoming a strategic shareholder in Grand Plaza, and personally took charge of redefining the hotel's vision and core values. Under his leadership, the Grand Plaza pledged to rebuild a workplace founded on civility, diversity, and respect, where prejudice, racism, and demeaning behavior would find no foothold. In less than 6 months, the Grand Plaza saw the most dramatic transformation in its history. Every staff member, from senior executives to housekeeping attendants, underwent rigorous training in cultural diversity, professional ethics, and proper conduct with guests from all corners of the globe. Omar enlisted top diversity experts alongside Denise Washington, once dismissed by Sandra herself, to teach real-world lessons. These sessions not only raised awareness, but offered the entire staff a brand new perspective. Even more importantly, Omar launched a completely revamped hiring policy based solely on ethical character, competence, and respect for human dignity. Dozens of new hires arrived from a kaleidoscope of backgrounds and ethnicities, turning the Grand Plaza into a living model of cultural harmony and equality. Among the standout new employees was Maria Gonzalez, a young Mexican woman who had once worked alongside Denise at their old cleaning company. Maria had endured Sandra's scorn firsthand, but now she was welcomed as a front desk guest relations associate, chosen not just for her deep cultural insight, but for her flawless bilingual English-Spanish skills. Maria's presence at the front desk sent a powerful message. The hotel had decisively broken with its dark past and was forging a compassionate, enlightened future. Omar personally oversaw a major public relations campaign, transparently broadcasting these reforms and offering a heartfelt apology for the hotel's past failures. The campaign quickly garnered positive media attention and public praise. Once again, Omar made it clear that cultural reform couldn't be a facade. It demanded genuine grassroots transformation backed by long-term honest commitment. As for Denise, she not only helped train the staff, but frequently returned as a special guest at Grand Plaza, leading seminars on courage and perseverance in the fight against discrimination. Every time she walked through those doors, it was a deeply moving homecoming, proof that the place of her greatest hardship had become the symbol of a remarkable positive change. These reforms began to revive the Grand Plaza's prestige. After 6 months, reservation numbers rebounded and even soared past their previous peak. Major corporations renewed partnerships, confident that the hotel's firm dedication to ethics and cultural diversity guaranteed a sustainable, thriving future. One sunny afternoon, Omar and Denise strode into the main lobby, the very site of that tense confrontation months before. Marcus stood waiting, beaming with pride. Omar, Denise, none of us could have imagined how profoundly the Grand Plaza would transform in such a short time. It's all thanks to your courage and resolve. Denise looked at Marcus, her eyes shining with genuine emotion. Marcus, it's not just Omar and me. People like you who believe this place could change deserve the real credit. True transformation only happens when we all believe in it together. Marcus returned her smile, pride and happiness radiating from him. He understood that the Grand Plaza was no longer merely a workplace. It had become a living testament to resilience, compassion, and the power of root-level change. Far away in a distant corner of the city, Sandra, once the embodiment of power and tyranny, had become a cautionary memory, proof that arrogance and prejudice ultimately plunge one into bottomless ruin. But most importantly, right now, the Grand Plaza had found its way out of darkness, rebuilding a hopeful, civilized image, one that would ripple far beyond the hotel's walls across the nation as a powerful declaration of humanity, fairness, and respect for culture. As Denise looked ahead to her bright future across town, Sandra Morrison sat alone in her shabby apartment, her hollow eyes fixed on the screen of a battered laptop overflowing with job rejection emails. Each one was brief and merciless, a stark reminder of her total downfall. Once a woman of immense power who ran one of the city's most luxurious hotels, Sandra now lived in unceasing shame. It had been 6 months since the Grand Plaza's racism scandal. Yet, its echo haunted Sandra like a relentless ghost. The video capturing her hateful outburst went viral overnight, racking up millions of views in days. She'd lost her job and her reputation, and most painfully the respect of her family and closest friends. No one would hear her excuses. No one had the heart to forgive the cruel words she had spewed. Her family, once so proud of her success and status, turned their backs. Sandra still winced at her sister's icy phone call. "Sandra, I never imagined you'd become someone like this. You've shamed our entire family. Don't ever contact me again." Those words cut deep, wounding the pride she'd once held so high. All her confidence felt like a bitter memory, as she realized her own bigotry had led to this ruin. Every time she ventured outside, Sandra felt the sting of judgmental, scornful looks from strangers. She tried hiding beneath wide-brimmed hats, but the more she concealed herself, the smaller and more meaningless she felt. Neighbors who once respected her now whispered behind her back whenever she passed. Loneliness crept into every corner of her mind until she scarcely recognized the woman in her mirror. Worse yet, Sandra applied everywhere, from small hotels and mid-range restaurants to retail shops, only to be turned away at every door. A simple online search of her name revealed the scandal, and every opportunity slammed shut. Sandra Morrison had become an indelible stain across the hospitality industry and beyond. One chilly autumn morning, Sandra sat alone, hands trembling around a long cold cup of coffee, staring at the latest headline: Denise Washington, from invisible housekeeper to icon of fairness and courage in business. The accompanying photo of Denise beaming beside Omar stung Sandra like a blade. The article read, "Denise's story is more than personal triumph. It's a powerful lesson for anyone trapped in racial prejudice." Sandra Morrison, former Grand Plaza manager and the scandal's architect, remains unemployed and socially ostracized. That was the final straw. Sandra slammed her coffee cup onto the table. It shattered, shards cutting her hand, but she barely felt a thing. Physical pain paled beside the torment in her mind. She wept, bitter tears of regret and anguish, her thoughts echoing. Why did it have to come to this? Why did I let arrogance and prejudice blind me? She replayed every moment she could have stopped herself, each chance to act differently, only to see she'd thrown them all away. Now it was too late. The woman who once believed power and prestige could excuse any cruelty finally recognized that true worth lies not in titles or wealth, but in how we treat others, especially those less powerful. Just then her phone rang, heart pounding. Sandra wiped her tears and answered. On the other end was the Grand Plaza's legal counsel. "Miss Morrison, this is to inform you that the company will not provide any severance pay for your termination due to gross misconduct. Please do not contact us again." Sandra went numb, dropping the phone to the floor. The soft click was a crushing punctuation mark. In that moment she realized she'd lost everything. Her job, her honor, her family, and the very essence of what once defined her. From the heights of power, she had plummeted into an abyss of her own making, with no escape from the cost of her arrogance and racism. Under the soft glow of the anniversary celebration at one of the city's most luxurious restaurants, Denise stood beside Omar, gazing out through the grand windows at the dazzling skyline. From up here, the city at night looked magnificent, so far removed from the days when Denise lived in the shadows of invisibility. The guests around them were prominent figures, international business leaders, all there to toast the extraordinary success that Denise and Omar had built together. Raising his champagne flute, Omar turned to Denise, his eyes filled with genuine warmth and gratitude. "Denise, tonight we celebrate more than the success of our social programs or the Grand Plaza's revival. We celebrate something far greater: the transformation of how people perceive the true worth of another human being. Denise smiled softly, her eyes alight with joy and sincere appreciation. You're right, Omar. When I think back on this journey, I remember the moment I first chose to speak up in the hotel lobby that day. I only wanted to do what was right. I never imagined that such a small act could change so many lives. Omar regarded her affectionately and added, Denise, it was your courage, your integrity, and your kindness that made all of this possible. You didn't let hatred or revenge guide you. Instead, you let your excellence prove that one's true value cannot be denied by anyone. Denise was quiet for a moment, her expression thoughtful. She recalled Sandra's cruel words back then, words that had once made her doubt her own worth. But now they were distant memories with no power to hurt her. She knew that true victory lay not in proving someone wrong, but in building a life so vibrant and meaningful that any attempt to diminish her became meaningless. Meanwhile, in a darker corner of the city, Sandra sat huddled in her shabby apartment. A dim street lamp outside cast a feeble light into the room, deepening her sense of isolation. Looking around at peeling walls and dilapidated furniture, she bitterly realized that her own arrogance and racism had driven her to this pit of despair. Sandra remembered the power she once wielded, the ability to control others' fates with a few scornful words or a disdainful glance. Now she understood how fragile and hollow that power had been. Her contempt for others, instead of making her stronger, had become a dagger turned against herself, destroying everything she had built. Thinking of Denise, the woman she once dismissed as invisible, Sandra admitted to herself how Denise's resilience, kindness, and admirable character had ultimately triumphed. Every effort she made to belittle Denise now stood as a glaring testament to her own mistakes. Sandra couldn't help but wonder how her life might have differed if she had chosen to listen, to understand, and to respect others instead of succumbing to arrogance and prejudice. Back at the celebration, Denise gently set down her champagne glass and turned to Omar, her voice filled with emotion. Omar, I've always believed that everyone deserves respect and the chance to show their true worth. I never sought vengeance against Sandra or anyone who hurt me. Instead, I want my life to send a larger message. We cannot control others' attitudes or prejudices, but we can choose how we respond and rise above them. Only excellence and kindness can truly erase the false judgments hurled our way. Omar nodded, pride shining in his eyes. You're absolutely right, Denise. You've shown the world that we don't need to meet hatred with more hatred. By building a life of meaning and value, you've rendered every insult from the past utterly meaningless. That, above all, is the greatest victory. Denise glanced around the elegant room where friends and colleagues chatted happily, their faces glowing with hope. Her heart felt warmer than ever. She knew her story would continue to inspire others to stand up for justice and their own worth. In this moment, Denise realized she had achieved the truest victory. Not by defeating someone else, but by creating a future so brilliant and strong that every attempt to diminish her value dissolved into nothing. Bathed in the celebration's warm light, Denise smiled at Omar, her heart at peace and full of pride. As their eyes met, they shared the profound message their journey had delivered to everyone present. True triumph lies not in revenge on those who scorn us, but in building a future so glorious that every attempt to undermine our worth becomes meaningless. Denise Washington's story is not just a remarkable journey of one brave woman overcoming prejudice. It's a powerful testament that a person's true value always resides in their excellence, their kindness, and the dignity they bring to the world around them. What about you? Have you ever faced prejudice or dismissal from others? And how did you rise above it? Share your story in the comments below. If you enjoyed this content and want more inspiring stories like this, please like, share with friends, and subscribe so you never miss a new video. Thank you for being with us, and we'll see you in the next story.